Indian Navy Rafale deal gets rolling. 26 Rafales were India's aircraft carriers. After Indian Air Force, Navy lines up for Rafale. Rafale 2.0, big Desi deal in sight.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Battle Cry. This week we're putting the spotlight on what is turning out to be India's second deal for the French Rafale jet. You all know about the 36 Rafales that the Indian Air Force signed up for in 2016. All 36 of those Rafale jets are currently in service. Well, the Indian government is now negotiating to sign a second Rafale deal, not for the Air Force, but the Indian Navy. Here's the latest of what we know.
Indian Air Force Rafales, about to complete 4 years since service entry. Fighters, 2 squadrons, one in Ambala, Haryana, the other in Hashimara, West Bengal. Deployed in Ladakh and for joint exercises abroad, the Rafale is cementing itself as India's most modern frontline jet fighter. But the Rafale won't be the Indian Air Force's exclusive preserve for long. The Indian Navy could see a deal concluded to provide it with 26 naval Rafale jets. The jets are intended to operate off the INS Vikrant aircraft carrier for starters and the Navy's future floating decks. After choosing the Rafale in early 2023, the Modi government is now poised to move swiftly to conclude an Indian Navy deal. Multiple indications suggest that the proverbial decks are being cleared for a contract. Top sources tell us that negotiations to fix price and configuration of the naval Rafales began in May and have already made steady progress on base price and other parameters. Should that happen, the first Rafales for the Indian Navy could arrive as early as 2028. Indian Navy teams have also dropped by the Indian Air Force's Rafale squadron in Ambala to create a detailed picture on maintenance and commonality benefits that will accrue once the naval Rafales arrive. Like the Indian Air Force, the Navy wants specific custom enhancements on its Rafales to suit the India-specific naval mission. These enhancements fall into the domain of helmet displays and other cockpit equipment, sensors with modified capabilities, additional modes in the combat mission computers, and software tweaks to the electronic architecture of the jet, transforming it into an Indianized jet, modified for the Indian Navy's unique needs. Apart from the 26 Rafales under negotiation for the Indian Navy, the Indian Air Force requires 114 more new generation fighters, which form part of a separate contest, in which the Rafale is but one contender. For this mother of all fighter jet deals, the Rafale will compete for the second time against rivals old and new, from the Swedish Gripen to the European Typhoon, to the Russian MiG-35, to the American F-15 Eagle II, and the new generation F-16. But with 36 Rafales already in Indian service and a deal for 26 more in sight, the jets maker Dassault believes that even holding a contest is pointless, since it stands to reason that the Indian government and Air Force would put a premium on commonality rather than add yet another type of aircraft to its already crowded inventory. To that end, Dassault, partially owned by the French government, is looking to acquire land in Uttar Pradesh suburbs of Delhi to set up a large facility aiming at becoming a maintenance hub for Rafale and Mirage 2000 fighters. A facility that could potentially expand into a mega hub to manufacture the Rafale fighter in India. Such a move will be seen as power play and a sweetener of sorts, as the French government is unwilling to let go of the chance to cement the Rafale as India's mainstay fighter for the next few decades. While the Indian Navy seems comfortably in line now for its new Rafales, the big picture will unfold in the weeks and months ahead.
So India's second Rafale deal, this time for the Indian Navy, is on track. All indications are that it is being negotiated to be signed by the end of this financial year. And to talk about this deal, the implications and the many things to take away from it, I'm joined by, as always, a very privileged panel. Vice Admiral Shekhar Sinha, former commander of the Western Naval Command, Air Marshal Anil Chopra, who's a veteran aviator. He's been in charge of the Indian Air Force's Safety Division, and Group Captain Augustine Vinod is also a veteran fighter pilot, very, very familiar with procurement and modernization issues. Gentlemen, welcome to Battle Cry. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom on India's #1 defense show. Admiral Sinha, I'd like to come to you first, because the Rafale deal that we're talking about here pertains to the Indian Navy. You've, flown a wide variety of naval fighters, including, if I'm not mistaken, the Rafale, sir. Your first assessment, the reason why we're doing today's show is that the Rafale deal, which for some years with the Navy had been, there had been some doubt about whether it's going to happen or not. Now we can confirm that negotiations are on in such a way that a deal could be signed even by the end of this financial year. How do you see it, Admiral Sinha?
Firstly, thank you for getting me on your show, Shiv, after a long time.
Yes.
And secondly, namaskar to all your viewers. I see this is a very good development for a simple reason that the MiG-29K, it was becoming a bit unsupportable as far as the maintenance is concerned. And the numbers are not enough to man the new aircraft carrier and possibly the subsequent aircraft carriers. So I see this even technology-wise, the Rafale, a shade superior, one maybe half a generation ahead or maybe one generation ahead of the MiG-29K.
Yes.
And the aircraft that it was competing with was the F-18 aircraft, the Hornet, Super Hornet.
Yes.
I would say, having had a little bit of handle on both these, I would say that technically the Rafale is far superior. Also, the ability of the Rafale to carry more weapon load and variety of loads, which I am sure the Air Marshal Chopra will probably be able to speak more. But the most of the commonalities between the Rafale M and Rafale is about almost 80%. There may be slight differences, obviously, in the airframe, because this aircraft has to land on the deck and it has to take off from the ski jump. So the nose undercarriage is a little bit longer, and the fuselage is a little stronger on the front and right at the back, because as you know that once the hook is down for arrestor wire and it comes to land, on landing it generates about 4.5 G of deceleration.
Yeah.
So which is quite a lot for a human being, and so it is for the aircraft. Given the technological advancements that India is making and its commonality with the Indian Air Force's Rafale, which they are already flying, I think that this is a very wise decision because logistically, it may become, slightly easier to handle. Also, as far as maintenance is concerned, we don't have to
Correct.
repeat the, BRD effort or, other kind of effort, third line, fourth line. I'm sure that IAF and Navy can share that. But it has always happened, Shiv, that in the past
Yes.
also, the aircraft performance-wise, the Air Force and Navy fighter aircraft, by and large, has been, very similar, either the avionics category or
Yes.
the speed category, in a manner that if there is a wartime, these two packages of both Air Force and Navy aircraft combined can form a package of either a
Absolutely.
strike cap or a cap or a strike
Yeah.
strike. And it has been tried. We have been flying with the TACD for a very long time.
Yes.
The Tactical Air Combat Development Establishment. It was established that we can have a formation of both the Navy, both Air Force and Navy fighter
Very.
aircraft, and we can actually lead a very good package.
This is
Sure.
very, very interesting, and I'd like to get a little deeper into that. But first, Air Marshal Chopra, you've heard what Admiral Sinha has said. To many people who've been watching this entire Rafale deal, first with the Air Force and now in line for the Navy, most people think it's a no-brainer. The Air Force has already gone through the motions, spent a lot of energy in a long field evaluation trials of many different kinds of aircraft and chosen the Rafale. And therefore, it was a bit of a no-brainer that the Navy should, in fact, choose the same thing. So in that sense, do you think that this is the correct path that the Navy has chosen?
Great to be with you, Shiv, once again, and to have two very great professional friends also on the panel. Undoubtedly, I think, as Admiral Shekhar Sinha has already mentioned, Rafale 4.5 generation already with us, interoperability between Indian Air Force and Navy. We have already done the India-specific, modifications. We have paid a lot of money for it. We have two bases where we have, place to put more aircraft within the Air Force. And not only that, parallelly, we are trying to move the 114 MRFA case. And it is important that whatever we decide, mind you, in the MRCA case one,
correct.
We have the Rafale beating the F-18, though both the aircraft now have been further modernized. So there is a case for Make in India. I personally been strongly writing that we should have the 114 plus these 26 of the Navy put together into a single package. Mind you, the spares, backup, the subsequent setting up of the overall facilities. Now, let me tell you a few more advantages, facts on the table. Between Rafale and F-18. Clearly, the Rafale Meteor is a much better missile than the AMRAAM. It's globally clear. Tomorrow, if we want to do a nuclear modification, Navy or Air Force, the Rafale will be so much easier because the Americans may put some, issue on that. Rafale is also a more recent, aircraft, though I would say the combat experience between the two aircraft is similar because the F-18s have done a lot of work in the West Asian region. So has Rafale done a lot of combat. But Rafale also scores ahead in electronic warfare, avionics, hard points, as the Admiral mentioned. Yes, there are 14 hard points in Rafale vis-a-vis 11 with the F-18. You can say comparable overall loads. Of course, the F-18 has advantage that it will have the G414 engine, which is finally going to be made in India. But a lot of homework has been going on for the last 3-4 years between the Navy, Air Force, and the MOD. I think it's a great decision to go for Rafale M. Mind you, the Indian Air Force can't afford to have more and more types of aeroplanes.
Absolutely.
You got 8 different types of fighters. We need to reduce this multiple fleets which have logistics and other.
I'm very glad you mentioned that, Marshal Chopra, because inventory and the number of different types of aircraft in the Air Force has been a challenge, if not a nightmare, for many, many years. So most people are actually wondering about precisely the point that you made. And I'll bring in Group Captain Vinod in on that point, which is, commonality. Why is the Indian government even thinking of, weighing other options? If both the Indian Air Force and now, it looks like the Indian Navy is also in line for a Rafale deal, Why is there any discussion at all, Augustine Vinod, in your view, on choosing another fighter? As Air Marshal Chopra said, you've invested a lot of national energy in choosing the Rafale. Why not just scrap any plans to hold any more evaluations or contests and build the Rafale in India?
A very good point, Shiv. And couple of leaves I'll take out of the other two senior officers. First and foremost is MiG-29K. It's like Air Marshal said, it's a no-brainer because MiG-29K is slightly an older generation fighter. And with Russia-Ukraine war, of all the Russian equipment, we are facing a huge amount of shortage in front in terms of spares, the serviceability. It's an open secret that the serviceability is in the all-time low in all the countries operating the Russian equipment. India is no exception. And rightly said, and I've covered that earlier also, Rafale is also, not many people know, is partly a stealth fighter. You can't pick it up on the radar. The radar cross-section of Rafale, though we are not yet calling it a stealth, the radar cross-section of Rafale is slightly bigger than a bird. So for Rafale, in our radar to show up, in a friendly radar to show up, it needs to go on as some kind of an automatic emission control technology exists in that. So it needs to show itself up. Then only you can pick it up. So that is one great advantage we have Rafale over F-18. So that is coming at no cost to you. You're having an F-35 closer to F-35 class of aeroplane. At a cost of F-18, which stands out like a sore thumb in the radar. And like Air Marshal correctly pointed out, and he was the one who got the previous, digital Delta.
Yes.
And I was part of the same squadron. The Mika missiles, I was the director when we inducted these missiles into the new Mirage 2000, is compatible with Rafale. So that brings us to the next point, the commonality of weapons. So you will have Mika, you will have Meteor going into Rafale, Mika going into Mirage, Jaguar, as well as the Rafale Indian Air Force and the Rafale Indian Navy.
Absolutely.
Now, another important aspect, quickly, Shiv, is our dominance in the Indian Ocean region. Not many people are aware. For Chinese to come into Indian Ocean region, there are only maximum 4 entry points, which is your Malacca, Sunda, Lombok.
Yes.
And if you go way down south, there's a place called Mumbai Bata.
Right.
These are 4 entry points. So now, imagine you have 2 carriers with Rafale with so much of range, a ferry range of 3,700 kilometers, which is of no consequence because in air-to-air refueling, you can fly from Toulouse to India without any issue.
Absolutely.
We are going to dominate the Indian Ocean region.
Absolutely, and I want to get it a little deeper into that, and I'm glad you mentioned, the Chinese angle in all of this, and I want to bring Admiral Sinha in on this, because remember, Admiral Sinha is not just a naval aviator, he's also been Flag Officer Commanding-in-Chief of the Western Naval Command, so he's had the Indian Ocean, literally under his sights for a long time. Admiral Sinha, in what way will the Rafale, obviously the Rafale is only one element of, a million-piece kind of, machine as far as deterrence is concerned, as far as, strategic force projection is concerned. But as an aviator, how would you say that it could play a bigger role given India's expanded responsibilities? Taking from what Group Captain Vinod has said, Rafales, more range, more weapons, the ability to project power, nuclear capabilities, etc., etc. How does it change the game vis-a-vis what we have right now, sir?
Shiv, this aircraft can be armed for 2 roles at the same time. One is an air-to-air role, and one is, of course, the air-to-surface or air-to-ground role, depending upon where is it operating. Number one. The second point is, as Group Captain, Augustine, I'm sorry, get your name right?
Yes,
He
Augustine
mentioned just now. The choke points through which the Chinese ships and submarine can come are these 4 points that he mentioned.
Yes.
And if you have to restrict their entry, or at some point in time, you decide to interdict the the trade, basically the energy lines which are emanating from either from Gulf or from the coast of Africa or from South America. They all have to pass through the Indian Ocean and they have to negotiate these points, both up and down. So you have a big advantage there. And given the range, the radius of action of these aircraft, you can reach quite far. The aircraft carrier can be at quite some distance while your aircraft can, do the job of firstly detecting and then destroying. But more importantly, Shiv, that you have two sides to protect. You have Arabian Sea, you have the Southern Indian Ocean and Bay of Bengal, and the manner in which the Chinese are doing up, the harbors in the Bay of Bengal. The time is not far that we'll have to keep a track of everything on the east what goes on, and also look at our own protection, our own shipping lines, our own harbors, our own the assets in the Andaman Nicobar Island. So you are looking at a very vast area, roughly as the rule of thumb. The width of the Indian Ocean at the tip of India's peninsula is about 3,000 kilometers. It's one hell of a lot. And if you see the area further down, you look at the protection and the confidence you provide to the Indian Ocean littorals, because they are totally dependent on your firepower, your maritime power, and they want the power to be available now and here, which, these aircraft and these ships can provide. So I would think that, this is very much different from what we can do now. And with really the two aircraft carriers and even the combination of MiG-29K are not going to go away tomorrow.
Correct.
I would believe that the Rafale M would come even well before the MiG-29s are done away. Even if they fly in two combinations and supported by the Air Force because of the ranges, you're looking at almost dominating the entire Indian Ocean. And that is the advantage. But, you have two types, different organizations operating same type of aircraft in same different piece of ocean. It's a big operational advantage.
It's going to be so interesting to see this whole commonality of an asset is perhaps going to happen in the most meaningful way for the first time. Marshal Chopra, civilians like me who have no experience in the difficult, military aviation sphere that all of you are used to, are picturing it almost like a video game. Indian Air Force fighters, naval fighters, refuelers, all operating over the Indian Ocean. But I'm not very wrong, am I? In terms of exercises, when the Rafales finally come, that's actually, in a sense, how it will play out. Together, joint operations.
Shiv, on many counts, more than three of us sitting here. You're all the time reading and interacting with such a large number of people. But let me come back to this discussion where Admiral left. Between the Chinese and the Rafale, J-20, the fifth generation aircraft with internal bays, mostly air superiority role, Rafale with 14 hard points, a great amount of load, because the day J-20 was to carry an external storage, not stealth anymore. As Augustine mentioned, that Rafale is the front hemisphere stealth recognized globally. So the point I want to make is that between Rafale and J-20, we all have done enough analysis, and we know that in many counts, Rafale is better engines, more reliable, electronic warfare suit much better, ISA radar much better. Some of the weapons, Meteor, of course, very good. Of course, the J-20 will also have good missiles. So on many counts, despite not being a fifth generation aircraft, I must say that the Rafale is absolutely outstanding. Now, I want to mention one more point, Shiv, that, the Americans, after 2000, when they became closer to us, certainly after 2008, they got into the aircraft ecosystems of the country. They got into transport aircraft, then they got into PAI, the helicopters. Now, they have got into most of the areas of our ecosystem in aviation, but the only area left is fighters. And we all know that whether it's the F-21 or whether it's F-18, the Americans are pushing hard. They're not yet offering the F-35 because of the S-400 connection. So there is going to be a push from their side,
Absolutely.
political and various other levels. But undoubtedly, as professionals, three of us sitting here and chatting with you, we are very clear that Rafale is a much, much better bet. And I think even in the security establishment, in the government, most of the people have understood these advantages that Rafale M will bring to us. And certainly, if Make in India is our final target, then we need numbers, and that means the MRFA and the Rafale M must join up as a good number to build.
And I can assure all of our viewers watching Battle Cry that we will report this developing story at every step. Group Captain Vinod, I wanted to come to you for another question, but I apologize. We're completely out of time on this episode. But I promise you we will continue this conversation. You know I am not lying about that. This is a story we take very, very seriously. The modernization of our military is a story that is close to our hearts, and we will continue to bring you the latest here on Battle Cry. Admiral Sinha, Air Marshal Chopra, Group Captain Vinod, thank you so much. A privilege to have you. That's it on Battle Cry. Thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned to India Today.